Hello guys, welcome to AGI Inception. Today we have Ray with us. Hi Ray, how are you?
Doing well, how are you?
All well, all well. Can you please introduce yourself a little bit or tell our audience a little bit about yourself before we move ahead?
Sure. My name is Ray. I work in New York City as a computational linguist and a natural language understanding research engineer. I have a background in linguistics, so I come from a place of studying this from the perspective of language, and I also have a law degree. So I'm particularly interested in my daily work in how all of the data that we get in the legal world and the legal sphere plays into how AI is doing things. And there's a lot of really interesting ethics stuff around that too. So my background's a lot. It's a little varied. I have a master's in information science as well. And I've been doing more graduate coursework in NLP and deep learning specifically.
Oh, and you will be learning the rest of your life like
yes.
me. And that's what if I don't learn something new every day, that bothers me. It just doesn't happen anymore.
I agree.
So again, go ahead, Rupesh.
So jumping to our theme of the podcast, what would your first input be for an artificial general intelligence which would start its self-assembly and also follow that word as one of the core principles?
The word that I would choose.
Mm-hmm.
I would choose translation.
Hey, that's interesting. Like, why would you, what is the thought process behind translation?
I mean, obviously I'm coming at this from a very linguistically oriented point of view, but you know, as with anything that we do with computers, they're very literal. Like if you ever remember the first time you sat down and tried to tell a computer to do something, and it probably, you probably wrote like a for loop and an if statement in there with a condition, and it probably executed the condition when you didn't want it to. And wait, you were supposed to understand what I meant. No, not what I wrote, what I meant. But they're stupid because they'll do exactly what you do. That's what computers are for. So there's a fundamental disconnect in the way that we're talking to each other and understanding each other right now, which is very intuitive, and the way that you have to encode information in human thought and human speech and just human behavior such that any kind of AI can understand what's going on. I mean, when we talk, we're talking over sound waves, that are turning into electrical impulses in your brain, which is really cool, but there's not a lot of bandwidth there. So there's a lot of compression, right? We're taking a lot for granted. We're taking a lot of assumptions for granted. Just, shared experience in the world and stuff is not going into that information stream.
Ray, Ray, excuse me. Rupesh and I talk, and I'm his mentor, and I said, it's important that we all understand our own thought process. And I told Rupesh, my thought process is in frequencies.
You might be the bridge to AI, the translator between human and machine.
And that's the way that I think. So actually, you say something that we just had our prior podcast guest, which is an expert on conversational AI, but you just brought the main point in here. Is what you may have done what I wrote, but that's not what I wanted.
What I meant.
And that's where you are. Ray is in the intersection of what I call science, philosophy, and real life around it. And that, I think, is the most fascinating of the topics, simply because I think people think only about what is going on every day, which is important for all of us, but they tend to forget that advancements in history of mankind always start right here. And that's what Ray brings in here, and I am so glad. So anyway, so you do translation, and what would be your second? Think of a node, in the AI, in the neural network. What would be your second?
My what?
Your second node if the first one is translation,
right.
what will be your second
node? Well, I mean, the translation bit is the part. So especially when you're thinking about language data, and we're all thinking about language data because there's so much of it everywhere. That first node is the bottleneck. That's the gateway to everything. So for me, the second node is question answering or information retrieval. You know, I'm trying to translate into numbers so that I can get a computer to then go fetch me answers if I ask a question. Like, tell me what the answer to my question, like, where was Abraham Lincoln born? Go find it in this text. And if it's not there, you know, what city was Abraham Lincoln born in? Be smart enough to figure out that, well, here's, you know, the state he was born, and, you know, here's maybe like the street, and put those together and figure it out. Which is a really hard question, but people want that. So,
but I want to know your thought of the future, 10 years from now.
You know, it's a really interesting thing because, and I'll send you a link to it. There's this great video on YouTube of like what was claimed to be the first neural machine translation, you know, machine in like the 50s. And it was spitting out pretty good translations. And they asked the guy on the tape, you know, well, where do you see this in 5 years? And he was like, oh, we're going to have it all figured out. By like 1960, machine translation is going to be solved, you guys. So it's just really interesting that every time, like, it feels like magic. A lot of this feels like magic. A lot of the NLP stuff that you do feels like magic because you're taking words and you're somehow compressing all of the meaning and all of the history and all of the humanity of these words into a series of vectors, more or less.
When you compress, are you thinking in terms of a ratio? And I'm gonna, this is an oversimplified example, but I think we have settled on that one. Good, bad. You have all the digital information out there. You translate. You do your information, you translate, do your information retrieval. And now is there a way that you are separating what is good or bad, or is just simply information?
That's a great question. And this is one of the things that's tricky about language because it's polysemous. It could be good or bad in the sense of quality, in the sense of did you get what you wanted? And it could be good or bad in the sense of is it ethical? Or it could be good or bad in the sense of, you know, is it good news? Is it bad? Like, I mean, there's a million ways to evaluate it. But yeah, usually what you're doing is you're trying to evaluate, right, whether this thing had a theory of mind for you. I mean, that's kind of what evaluation metrics are doing in this sphere. And it's really funny because I think, and you say, as you say, that this is the intersection of philosophy and real life. But a lot of people are just like, no, it's, you know, it's cross entropy, whatever. You're really asking, does this thing understand my head? Does this thing understand? Understand is a metaphor. Obviously, it doesn't understand anything. It's just doing a whole lot of calculation. But you know, you're kind of putting the metaphor of theory of mind on top of these networks. So let's make those assumptions, translation, information retrieval. You know, what we think is there's a difference between that we think and even what we write, whether it's code or is actually the closest ones are the poets, in a sense, and the musician. Yep. And so when you do this and you give us the dose of reality with the example of the translation in 1950s, a good dose of reality. Thank you. That's but nevertheless, let me tell you where my dream is. My dream is that it's a science fiction, Star Trek more than anything else. Everybody have the opportunity to become the best that they want to be. And I know it's science fiction, and I know you're going to give me a dose of reality. I can see it already there, but that's my dream. What is your dream? I think that's brilliant and spot on. And I think that everybody should be thinking like you. Can we make everyone listen to this?
You know, I want. Where you live? Where you live right now, Ray?
I'm in New York.
In New York. Next time I'm in New York, I will contact you. We will share a meal, or if you're in California, no, I'm in Florida, but if you're in California, let me know, because I have two of my children, grown children, you know, very smart, that they think that their daddy, their papi, is crazy. Because I always thought, and I want to bring you with me. I want to say, look, what do you think? Thank you. I don't even know really how to thank you. We need to type on trains and, you know, and everything. We need to wrap it up. I'm going to ask you, going to put you on the spot. I would like to have you in another podcast in the future.
Sure.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Rupesh.
Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you so much. It's really been nice talking to you.